The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Welcome, everybody.
Hey, just like that, we're here.
Now, James Bond fans out there, you may remember at the end of The Spy Who Loved Me, it said James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. But the next James Bond movie we actually got was Moonraker.
Moonraker.
Capitalize on Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Yes.
Damn straight, yeah.
But at the end of Moonraker, it said James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. And then we finally got For Your Eyes Only. So the reason I bring this up is that last week we announced that we were going to be covering Da 5 Bloods and Kelly's Heroes, which we will be, but not until next week because that episode got bumped. We are presenting today a very special episode, The Umbrella Academy Season 2.
So excited. That's right.
All right, so what are your thoughts on? And this is going to be a stealth episode. So if we're going news,
not only stealth, we are going to spoil the living crap out of this. So, well, do we need to play catch up with season 1? Where do we end up with these characters at the end of the first season?
Well, we had an apocalypse at the end of season 1, and 5 gathered them all together to avoid the impending apocalypse, which is Vanya had destroyed the moon, and it was raining down upon the earth.
Yep.
So he warped them out of their current timeline, and that's pretty much where season.
That was it, right? You had no clue. There was no. It was a cliffhanger in the sense that you didn't know where they were, or what happened. Just that the Earth was destroyed, but they somehow had miraculously avoided being a part of it.
Yes, and we knew throughout the entire season that it was leading up to an apocalypse that 5 was trying to prevent because he had come back in time from this apocalypse.
Right.
But nobody knew that it was Vanya that caused it. And at the time, nobody even knew that Vanya had powers. So
correct. So that was a nice reveal. So we get right into this season 2, and we just pick right up where we left off, which is them catapulting back in time. And I think it was really nice. You see each one of them gets dumped in the same alleyway, and we find out that it's in Dallas, Texas, but at different times.
But they are on the same timeline, the same reality.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Because I will tell you right now that as much as I love time travel, like sometimes it really makes my head hurt.
All these different shows and movies, they treat it in a different way.
Right, correct. Yeah, it does seem to be like different rules apply to Marty McFly than to what 5 is pulling here. So you just have to go with it. But I love the fact. So the first season was great in the sense that these characters, even though they refer to themselves as brother and sisters, they're not related in any way, shape, or form. We find out.
But you got to think of it this way: they grew up together.
They did grow up together, correct. But there was a lot of sibling infighting. And in this, you don't get that because they're all separated. So they each get their own space and storyline to kind of breathe, and you get to know their characters a little bit better. And I really like that setup.
Yeah, it's much more, even though the beginning parts of this season has them separated, as you said.
Right.
Because they are coming back on different timelines. So they each start a life for themselves, not knowing that the others, although I think it was 2 of them came back together, Klaus and Ben.
Well, because he's connected. Ben is dead, if anybody doesn't know that. Ben is dead. Ben is a ghost, but he is somehow connected to Klaus, who can see dead people, and they are they travel side by side.
Right. I thought that two of them, besides Ben, came back together, but I could be remembering.
I have it down here. Allison showed up in 61. Klaus and Ben were in 60. Luther was 62. Diego was in 63. Vanya was
Okay.
in 63, but they were separated by a couple
They were
months.
separated.
by
I
a
must be
month.
thinking of Ben then. I must be thinking of Ben.
And then number 5 catapulted into 63 as well, but after the Kennedy assassination.
Right.
And that's when the first 5 minutes of this show is like the greatest thing ever.
Because we get another apocalypse.
Yeah, because if anybody knows their history, JFK was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963. And 5 arrives 3 days later to all out Armageddon. We're being invaded. And it's what happened? Did somebody...
It's a nuclear catastrophe, and Russians are charging the streets of Dallas.
Because, if Russians were going to invade, I guess Dallas would be the first place they'd come, right? Because that was the Cuban Missile Crisis, was leading into all that other stuff. But yeah, it's just so right out of the gate, you're like, all right, what is going on? And we need to get these guys together as quick as possible. But the one thing which I loved, so here's where the time travel crap comes in, because we're reintroduced to Hazel, only to have him being shot by a bunch of Swedes, but not before he hands 5 this secret footage tape called the Frankel footage.
Right. But he's lived a life. So
he's
Hazel,
lived
and I
his
think
full life.
Agnes, right? That was his wife.
That was the lady he left with in the cafeteria lady.
So it's like an up situation where he's alone because they've both lived a life together, and then she got sick and died, and now he's alone as an older man.
Yeah, and it took me a minute to even realize who it was.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden he's on, So they play fast and loose, but we find out that Luther is working with Jack Ruby,
As muscle.
as like a strong arm. Yeah.
So not only is he a bodyguard in Jack Ruby's strip club, but he's also doing illegal boxing for Jack Ruby on the side, so people can gamble. Which was, and all those scenes were directly out of the Guy Ritchie Snatch.
Yeah, you're right.
It's pretty much everything that Brad Pitt went through in those bare knuckle boxing scenes is what happens to Luther here. Even the slow motion, knockout punch where you see Brad Pitt.
Yep. Right.
In profile, fly up in the air in slow motion. Same thing happens to Luther.
Yep. So that's where Luther is. Allison has now, the one thing that happened at the end of last season was she got her throat cut and was unable to speak, let alone use her superpowers, which is the power of suggestion.
Persuasion, yes.
Yeah. She has fully healed. Vanya, by the way, actually initiated that in their big fisticuffs at the end. But she's happily married.
To a civil rights activist.
Yes. And we'll get into that because I thought that was brilliant. This is, obviously all of this has been filmed, has been sitting, waiting months during this pandemic to be released. But all the stuff that's bubbled up in our society in the last couple of months, it seems very timely.
Yeah, very prescient.
With this, going into the 63 and the civil rights and all this other stuff. There's a lot of that going on beneath the surface.
Because there's an unbearable scene where they stage a sit-in and all at this diner that's whites only. Because it's, 1960, whatever year that they staged the sit-in. And so they're being abused by all these racist patrons of this diner, having coffee poured on them and everything else.
And it's so cringeworthy. Now, imagine, actually going back to that time and seeing how we treated humans. Who cares what the color of your skin? It's disgusting. And you can see it in Allison that she's just like this is, all right, I now have a cause.
Yeah.
She has a cause. But we learn later, she does have her powers, but she chooses not to use them. And when her husband finds out, and I'm jumping all over the place at this point, but her husband does find out that she has superpowers. And the first thing he says is, why didn't you use them to further our cause? And then he's like, did you use them on me? Which is a valid question, right? Now all of a sudden you're rethinking everything that you've done up to that point. If you find out that your partner has this ability to, oh, honey, rumor has it you're going to give me another cup of coffee,
Right. But they play fast and loose with that, too, because some people don't remember and others do that she uses the power on, like the Swedes. They know that they've been manipulated.
Yeah, so we'll get into the Swedes. There's 3 of them. There's like this blonde squad that shows up, and they're basically hitmen hired by the handler, who somehow survived, because didn't we think that she was dead at the end of last season?
Yes. Yeah. She
Okay.
got shot in the head, but she had
Yep.
it's explained away that she has a metal plate in her head.
Yeah. It was like yep. So she's alive, and she had made this backdoor deal with 5 at one point. They're sent in to basically clean up the timeline.
Right. But she no longer has her elevated status in the commission.
Right, correct.
She's been
in
demoted.
the commission. Yeah.
So she's kind of working on her own with with an undercover agent, shall we say, named Lila.
Who is my favorite addition to this series.
Yeah, I was irritated at first because I'm like, okay, another model-looking girl that happens to be in the mental asylum, but then it starts to make sense that she's...
Well, right, because we don't know. We just think that she's a crazy person in the asylum with Diego, which is where he is, because he is obsessed with taking out Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald.
Because he thinks that he's been sent back for a reason, and that is to save
And why
JFK.
wouldn't it be? If you suddenly show up in Dallas in any early 60s and you have the ability to save the president of the United States, I would have done the same thing. I would be on the same mission.
But it becomes his obsession to the point
Yes, no.
institutionalized because they think that he's crazy. That's all he talks about.
Yeah.
He has to save JFK because he's going to be assassinated.
Yeah. And I love out of all the characters, he's the one who's the most transformed. He's got this burly beard and long hair. And at one point, when they are reunited, 5 actually, like they're getting ready to go into battle. And he's like, I just wanted to let you know that, you really look like Antonio Banderas. And I just want you to.
It was Klaus. Yeah.
But I think he looks more like the Geico caveman. He's saddled with this crazy girl, Lila, who we just think is in the asylum, and that she's hooked up to him.
Patient. Yeah, who's a fellow
correct.
patient.
But yeah, you find out pretty quickly that she is secretly undercover working for the handler to keep track on.
And spoiler alert, not only is she working for the handler, but it turns out she's the handler's adopted daughter.
Yeah, we do see that in a flashback that the handler basically takes out her family.
Because Lila is one of the, 43 children?
One of the 43
that
children.
Hargreaves didn't get his hands on. So there's a correlation now in season 2 between the handler and Hargreaves. She was trying to collect some of these kids as well.
Yep. So let's go back to Klaus, because Klaus is as nuts as he is, got even crazier and started a cult.
Yes. So if you were irritated by Klaus in the first season, you are not going to warm to him in season 2.
Oh, I absolutely love him.
He turns it up into 11 in season 2. And I was annoyed by Klaus, not because he's flamboyant or anything like that, just because he's so egotistical and all about himself.
Isn't that what a cult leader is all about?
Well, that's what he becomes.
The cult of Klaus.
It is just so sickening to me to watch.
But even he's like turned off by just the level of obedience that these followers have for him, and he's just like, all right, enough, just stop. And he tries to escape from them to the point where he ends up because he was an alcoholic and I guess he was clean, and then at one point during this series he does turn back to the bottle, and that's a pretty crazy
and
scene.
I'm pretty sure that he gets the most screen time out of the siblings. Because Ben plays large in this. I mean, Ben did show up, in season 1, and you have him, but I think the two of them, they all, like I said, they all really, and Vanya, we didn't talk about Vanya yet, which... Yeah, conveniently, she's the only one that has amnesia from the jump.
Yeah.
So she's staying with a family who has an autistic son.
Harlan.
11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
And she's bonding. So the family found her.
They hit her.
Took her
with
home.
The car.
They hit her with the car.
They went full on Marty McFly.
Yeah.
Hit her with the car.
So she's pretty much a live-in nanny to this family and takes care of the son.
But here's so there's a salacious relationship growing between her and the mom. And Carl, the dad, it doesn't really seem like he's a bad guy. But they want you to root for Vanya and this mom, who do get together. They do sleep together. But she's only been there a month. There was a month and they were like, I'm ready to run away with you. They couldn't be that attached to her. But yeah, that's a weird storyline. And like you said, she's conveniently amnesia. So she has no memory. She doesn't know. Yeah. She knows her name. That's it.
And as you said, it's a month and the dad seems so kindly in the opening episodes. and then he turns into just some evil entity towards the end. Not that
Right,
he's
and
like
it's
a villain,
No,
but he
he was
just
never
becomes
like
dastardly.
Yeah. So that's a weird thing going on there.
And
We
let's
do
talk about what's going on in the commission, because I loved this. You know, we already mentioned that the handler's been demoted, and taking her place is AJ, which is
The fish.
basically a fish tank on a robot body.
Which is a brilliant design, by the way.
A wonderful visual, a wonderful
Yes.
visual.
Yeah.
And Herb, who's probably my favorite character.
Herb,
in season
yeah.
two.
This little nebbish
He's like a
bookworm.
bookkeeper. He's like a bookkeeper.
And he's
at
like
the
2
commission.
inches tall. He's like the smallest little man I've ever seen in my life.
So he's kind of like the audience's in to the commission. You know, whenever he's on the screen, it's to explain something that's going on to a character, and in turn the audience, like what the commission's overall plan is, which the handler is outside of. She's after her own agenda, so she's
Right.
working against the commission to
Right.
try to get back in.
So Hargreaves, which we find out on this Frankel footage that he's present at the grassy knoll during the president's assassination.
Yeah, Diego thinks that he's the assassin.
Yeah. Well, why would you not? It's
Yeah.
like, all right, what's Dad doing there? And this is the one thing I think it was like episode 2. I'm like, so they're all separated. You know, you land in Dallas. All right, so the Earth didn't blow up. You are in a timeline, but you don't know where your siblings are. But you know where your friggin' dad lives. Why wouldn't they all just somehow make their way back to the mansion? Luther's the only one who jumped on a bus and actually made the pilgrimage back to tell his dad who he was and what's going on. But I think in doing so, really screwed things up because Hargreaves wanted absolutely nothing to do with it.
Didn't believe that he would adopt children. First,
I hate kids. I hate kids.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they ever adopt them?
And he
yeah.
was like Hugh Hefner when Luther showed up. He's
Yeah.
like hosting this party with all these young women. And
Yes, and we see Grace, who was quote unquote their mom, even though she was a robot in season 1. And there she is, and Luther's like, "You're real." She was like his date that night or something. But and he's part of this Majestic 12, which is a secret under society thing going on. So they got some nefarious.
Yeah,
doings.
and that was a very similar deal, I think, to the Smoking Man in X-Files.
Oh yeah,
His
yeah.
underbelly government group.
We see Pogo.
As
Yeah.
a young little chimp.
He has a promising career in Space Force, I heard.
Just don't put him with a dog.
That's true.
Those scenes reminded me of Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
Yes, yeah,
Giving
yeah.
Cornelius and Zero.
Well, the minute
all
you
those
put
tests.
a chimp in a flight suit,
Yeah.
And the one thing we haven't talked about yet, which is the just off the charts soundtrack, which is
wonderful sound.
but it's so hit or miss. Like it's just like it's like a 4-year-old just going through Dad's library of albums and be like, "Oh, I like this Kiss song. Let's play it." And
No, that's what I would be like if I was making a show. I'd
think
be so excited to put music into it.
I agree with you. If we were in charge of this, we probably would do the same thing. Because when Klaus goes on his bender, they're playing Styx Renegade, which is one of my all-time favorite songs. The Swedes, they did a Swedish version of Adele's Hello as they're laying their brother who was killed, in a Viking funeral ceremony, and it's just so off just weird choices, but delightful, absolutely delightful. And so they do get back together. Eventually they all find themselves in the same space and time. And like I said, the Vanya storyline, again, it's like season 1, it followed like that Dark Phoenix storyline.
Yes.
And then here they didn't know what to do with Vanya. And it was just going to repeat itself.
Yeah, it's like they had to get her out of the main story for the beginning of the season and
Right.
like just sequester her in this house with this family. But I liked the fact that they slowly bring her back into the fold, where she does believe them,
Right.
that they're her siblings, but she still doesn't remember them. Yet she's part of the team anyway as the season goes on. And that's what I really liked about it, because as we said, they're separated and they have their own lives at the beginning of the season. But as the season goes on, they're coming together as a team. And you never really saw that in season 1.
No, that's what I was saying. There was a lot of infighting. And so this really gives each character and the audience time to kind of know them and to care about them. So when they are brought back together, they now have a common purpose.
Yeah, because season 1 was really like, like a Big Chill type of situation where they haven't seen each other in years. They're coming together for the funeral and they're still fighting. But now, as you said, They have to work together, and they do. So you get a glimpse of what they were like when they were kids.
And that's the other thing too, is I think you only get one flashback to them as kids in this whole season, where last season they did a fair amount of juxtaposition back and forth to kind of fill you in on who and what they were as kids. Right. And even then, I think that was only in Vanya's head as her, because what happens is that Harlan runs away, and this kid is in a pond for like a millisecond, and somehow he's at the bottom and he's dead.
It didn't take her that long to find where he went.
No, she hears a splash and she runs over and uses the powers to push away the water, and there he is. He's already blue. And she does, and once again, worst cinematic CPR ever. She somehow transfers part of her powers to him while giving CPR. So now he has this ability or whatever it is that she has, because he's challenged. He's mentally challenged, so he's not. He needed to be kind of looked after anyways, and he did, look up to her. But
and he's kind of the catalyst for what happens in the last couple of episodes is Harlan, because she has to get back to help him, because she is captured soon after she saves Harlan by the local police, because the father, she was running away with the mother and Harlan. Yep. And the mother had left the father a note. So he sends an APB out after them. They arrest Vanya, and then she's in the FBI building, which we learn is what sends off the doomsday that we saw.
Yeah, so see, that's where I didn't like it, where once again, it's Vanya's fault. And I think Hargreaves was suppressing her knowledge that she had abilities in season 1. You found that out, and that was like when everything started breaking down and she was losing her mind. And I think when she... you can rationalize why she had amnesia, because maybe some of those mechanisms were still in place, or you just shut down when you realize that you just blew up the world. Yeah. Like, I'm not dealing with this today. Yeah. Let me go find a farm mom to bang. And one of my favorite moments is when they do get back together and Allison uses her powers on Diego. And she says, I heard a rumor you punched yourself in the face. And he punches himself. But there's a lot going on here.
There is.
10 episodes. But like I said, you get to the 8 and you're like, here we go again. It's Vanya's fault and we got to stop Vanya. But they kind of shut that down really quick.
Yeah, I liked that she wasn't the bad guy.
No, because that was, if that's how it would have ended yet again, I would have been very disappointed.
Right.
But they bystepped that. And
so the end, well, they have to get Vanya out of the FBI building, because it transpires that the reason that World War III happens is that Kennedy is not assassinated, but Vanya, in an explosion of power, destroys the FBI building that she's being held in. And it's assumed by the government that it's the Russians, because they think that she's a Russian agent. So that kicks off the apocalypse.
That was a great scene too, because they're interrogating her, and the guy's like, so you don't remember anything, but you remember your name. And she's like, yeah.
It makes sense. It's
right. Yeah. How convenient.
Reason to believe this.
Yeah. But, and then he starts accusing her of being a Russian spy, and he says something to her in Russian, and she replies in Russian.
Yes.
And she's just as shocked as he is that it came out of her mouth. And so she's like, oh crap, maybe I am.
So 5 knows this, that it's Vanya that causes the apocalypse. So they have to get Vanya out of that FBI building. And this is where Ben actually comes in physically into this storyline, because Klaus is the only one that can interact with Ben through most of the season because of his ability to convene with the dead. So Ben is stuck, like almost, handcuffed to Klaus. Yeah. He cannot do anything but go where Klaus goes, because it turns out Ben was about to go into the light after he died, and Klaus brought him back. And now Ben is kind of a captive to Klaus. So Ben saving the day is twofold. Not only does he save the day, but he can move on from this plane. So he has to say goodbye to Klaus, and he moves on. So I assume that we will not be seeing Ben in this capacity
in this
seasons.
Capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does that mean? And that was really nice, because he's like, I don't want you to die. And he goes, I died 17 years ago, but then he says, can you just hug me as I go? And that was like, so, that was really, I think, one of the first times you see these characters show sympathy and compassion for each other.
And it's the first time that Ben is really utilized as well. He's just a comic foil for Klaus for most of this.
Right.
So Vanya's out of the FBI building thanks to Ben. And that leads us into the conclusion where they all go back to the farm because Vanya needs to help Harlan because she's got to take her power back that she's given him.
And that's a nice scene too, where she's, I got to go back, you know, and they're like, we need you. And she gets in the car, and then one by one, they all get in the car with her.
That was really good. And then at the end, you're thinking, where's Luther? Where's Luther? And then he finally shows up and
bottoms out the car as he sits in the bag. Now, we didn't even get to the time traveling 5, the older version.
That was really a highlight.
You look like Brian Doyle Murray there.
Yeah, he did.
There's so much craziness, and there's a great scene where, you know, 5 tries to explain to Luther the rules of time travel, and the fact that there's 2 5s in the same timeline, even though they're different ages. There's like 7 signs. One of them's flatulence and incoherence, and it becomes like this silly running joke. And every time he like farts, he's like, that's it.
Yeah, that was actually my favorite episode. It was called The 7 Signs, and it was also what was going on was 5 has told the siblings that they have to meet in the alleyway, all of them, because the handler has given them a deal. If 5 kills the committee from the commission, that the handler will give him a box, the time machine, and send them back to 2019, but only if they are in the alley all together at this certain time. Yeah. And so 5 tells them all that. They all have to say their goodbyes, and of course they don't all make it back. So, but the rushing of everybody and not knowing if they're going to make it, I think that was my favorite episode.
Yeah. And we also found out that Lila has powers, which is she's basically the Taskmaster. She can replicate any power that she...
Or Rogue, you know, that anybody...
Well, Rogue has to touch you. Rogue absorbs takes your powers. But I thought it was great. I thought it was great. And she, you know, there's a couple really nice, you know, thank Daredevil, because now every superhero has to have a hallway fight, right? Yes. It's like its own trope at this point. But it's nicely done because she was tasked with saving 5. So at one point she leaves Diego to fend for himself. And he's like, what the hell, dude?
Because, it's funny because the commission has sent the Swedes back to kill 5, yet the handler wants him alive. So, that was a nice scene. So at the end, we get Lila and the handler facing off against the siblings with an army.
An armada, like every agent. Yeah.
Of commission agents.
Yep.
And Vanya takes them all out pretty easily. Yep. And that's
pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, again, go right to the Dark Phoenix, which is, you know, Xavier knew how strong and powerful Jean Grey was, and he put those, you know, in the comic series, at least they've never been able to do this storyline correctly in the movies. But, you know, he put these inhibitors in place to keep her locked down so that she didn't realize her full potential. And that's exactly once Vanya unleashes it. They even said at one point, Vanya's the bomb. Vanya will always be the bomb.
But that's the big reveal. Once the smoke clears, you see like a little force field bubble, which is Lila taking some of Vanya's power and encasing it around herself and the handler. So they still have to deal with those two. And that leads into the climax of the last episode, which is shocking. The handler comes in and guns down the entire Umbrella Academy.
Yeah. You're like, what the hell? I guess there's no season 3.
We get the call back a little bit earlier in the season when the whole gang went to go visit Hargreaves. And he's trying to wrap himself around the fact that these are his children from, you know, that are adopted from years later. Yeah. He takes 5 aside and gives him a little advice. He says, okay, you're all over the map in this time travel business. Why don't you try a few seconds instead of decades?
Yeah, which was actually really nice. It was because that's what got 5 in trouble to begin with, is that he couldn't control.
Yeah, he can't control where he's going. He flails, and then we get what we got in the beginning of the season, where they're all coming into different years.
Right.
But that's what he does. After they're all shot, 5 is still alive, and he goes back just seconds to before the handler walks into the barn and shoots.
It's almost like he had the Omega-13.
Yes. So 5 saves the day. Yep. The handler ends up getting shot. And then the one last remaining Swede joins Klaus's cult.
Because really, what else are you going to do?
Yeah, he's stuck in the 60s now.
Right.
But then we get the big reveal, because now Herb is the head of the committee.
Yep. Yeah, good for Herb.
The commission, the interim head. So I guess he's just in place for a little bit.
Well, it's because AJ was swallowed.
Yeah.
The handler ate him.
Herb gives them a time travel briefcase from one of the dead agents that are in the field, So that begs the question. There's still like 500 time travel.
Right, correct, right. Just all laying around, yeah.
So they go back to 2019 in the closing seconds of the season. They go back to 2019 to the mansion. They think that they're back to where they time traveled out of. Turns out not to be. Hargreaves is alive. Their father is alive, and he has the Sparrow Academy. So this is where it got very confusing for me.
Yeah. Well, all the characters were like, what's going on here?
So in this timeline that they go back to, their father has different children that he's raised, and Ben is
one of them. Yeah.
Not only is he one of them, he's number one. He's the leader of the Umbrella Academy, and they're still kids in 2019. It looks like.
Yeah.
The 1989 thing is out the window if they're still kids. First of all, Hargreaves doesn't seem to recognize any of our heroes, the Umbrella Academy. Yet they've already established that it's all the same.
Right.
So Hargreaves would have to know who they were because he encountered them all in the 60s, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you could just play it off that I don't know who you are.
Yeah,
that's a full-on Obi-Wan from a certain point of view.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
It just leaves a lot of questions.
It does, but I loved it.
Absolutely.
And I loved the first season too, but I think this improved like 100%.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I thought this was, in this, I plowed through these. I mean, you can't help.
It's very easy to do. It's in less than a week.
It's candy.
Yeah.
Like you can't just watch one episode.
No. So who's your favorite character in the second season?
I really like Lila. She grew on me,
good.
and I really liked her. She's got a really unique look and a different take, because you thought she was one thing, and now she knows that, I mean, by the end, she figured out that the handler had killed her parents to get to her. So, and she's gone, but I love her powers, and I'm hoping that she'll be back.
I really liked Diego in this season.
Yeah, Diego was I think he's, storyline wise, like I said, they all kind of get their chance to shine.
Yeah, because he was like just a humorless assassin in the first season.
Correct. Yeah. I think
he has personality, he has character, and he was one of the funnier things about this season.
It wasn't 5 at one point when they were looking for he goes, think Batman but less. But you have to wonder, like, all the changes. We need to get to the storyline. Klaus finds his lover David, who died in Vietnam, and he's trying to talk him out of enlisting. Did David like somehow save himself, knowing that he was going to die in the battle?
That was another thing that I had issues with Klaus. That was extremely ill-advised. Looking as he does to confront this guy who has no idea who he is.
No.
And has no idea who he himself is either.
Right.
And confronted with this thing that's, against anything in the timeline that he has ever seen before.
Yeah, I don't think Klaus really thinks too much. Like you said, he's pretty self-absorbed. So
yeah,
he really, and Ben was yelling at him the whole time, "Don't do it," and he didn't care. But Allison's husband Ray, she told him everything. So how does that change what he does going forward, knowing what the future is, or knowing that they're superheroes? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like all these little things that they affected in that 1963 timeline. And again, we don't know if the timeline they came into is the same one. Was it revealed in season 1 that Hargreaves is an alien?
I don't think so. That was a shock to me.
It was, okay. I think it was like page 2 of the comic book. I have the 2 graphic novels, and I don't remember. Dallas is the second book, but I don't know how closely they adhered. I don't remember any of the Vanya stuff, so I don't know if that's, they created that specifically for the show. But it was established pretty early in the comic books that he was an alien, but this left no doubt. At one point, he actually takes his skin off.
He kills the Majestic 12,
and then, And so now we also have Harlan running around somewhere with superpowers.
Because Vanya thinks that she's taken him back, but she hasn't 100%. So he's still empowered.
Right. Yeah. I loved it. And I also, in the beginning, maybe the first couple episodes, I really got like almost like they were going out of their way to shoot like a 60s vibe, Technicolor kind of a feel.
Yeah.
But I think as the series went on, I kind of lost that.
Yeah,
just,
and you know what they didn't really they touched on it a little because Allison is married here, but Luther and Allison's relationship. And I think one of the highlights, because I like Luther this season as well,
Yes.
even though he's
Yeah.
very hangdogish and, just kind of moping around like a big Eeyore. But
that's true. That's perfect. Yeah.
when he goes to Allison's house and Ray is there, and there's like an awkward sit down where, Luther introduces himself as Allison's brother.
Yeah.
And he's chewing, and I don't know what Ray gives him to eat, but as he's chewing, he's like, they're having this stilted conversation, like, "Oh, where are you staying?" "Oh, in this home for men, reasonable rates."
Right. Yeah, he was really kind of down on himself on this, and just like maybe there's a reason he should have gone back to the moon. I don't know.
Yeah.
So the one thing I did read, if you go back and rewatch this, there are 43 hidden sparrows throughout the series.
Really, as a little
like
Easter egg
Mickey,
for the
like
Sparrow
Mickey
Academy?
Mouse's, little Mickeys in Disneyland, little
Okay.
Easter eggs hidden all over the place, forcing me to go back and rewatching it. So,
maybe I'd gladly rewatch this.
I know.
Gladly.
And like we said, just below the surface, there's so much going on with the, the gender and the race equality and all that other stuff that plays. So
a lot of substance. I would
Yep.
do. I think I'd do 4.25 buckets on this.
I'll match that.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't
Love
remember
it.
what I gave the first season, but I think
don't know
it is an
either.
improvement. I think
Yeah.
it is an improvement.
Yep. So season 3, hopefully they'll come out just as quick. We don't wait 5 years in between Lost in Space 1 and 2.
Let's move on. Let's quickly go to the concession stand because our time is running out here. So let's talk Fanboys.
Good evening. It's intermission time, and during the next 10 minutes, we invite you to visit our refreshment stand located in the center of the drive-in. Our service is friendly and quick. You'll find hot dogs, hamburgers, pizza, your favorite candies, hot and cold beverages, and other delicious snacks. So add to your fun of watching the movie. Visit our refreshment stand right now during our 10-minute intermission. We're glad to have you with us tonight, and we hope you'll come to see us often. It's great to get out to the movies.
Fanboys. This was not as clever as I remembered it.
Hey, this was the first time I had seen this, and for some reason, I had thought that this was a documentary. That this was
really?
not
Am I like
fictional
Trekkies,
movie.
like Trekkies or something?
Because it didn't get a lot of press, and I was reading some of the backstory. It didn't open nationally. It only opened.
No, and it was like filmed in 2006, but it didn't even come out until 2009.
Yeah, very bizarre backstory.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. But if anybody doesn't know this movie, it's a love letter to Star Wars. It's a bunch of nerds. They find out that one of the kids they went to high school with is dying of cancer, and this is right on the cusp of episode 1, The Phantom Menace, coming out.
Yeah, and we've heard this happening in reality, where not kids breaking into the Skywalker Ranch, but somebody out there that's a huge Star Trek fan, for example, that's dying of a terminal illness.
I want a private screening.
Abrams will give him a private screening before the movie's actually released.
Yeah. Yep. So I guess as kids, they've always dreamed about going to Skywalker Ranch and stealing a movie, and so they decide to bring this caper up, and that's what it is. It's a road trip movie. It reminded me a lot of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
And they are in it, actually. There's so many cameos in this.
But that's funny because, so like you said, you're reading a lot about this because it was filmed, and then the studio somehow decided that after test screenings, they cut out all of the references to the kid dying of cancer.
Which is crazy.
Because that's the heart of the story.
That's the heart of the story.
Otherwise, it's just a bunch of drunk idiots driving across country to break into George Lucas's house.
And this is what they did. They got another director in to film pickup scenes to take place the scenes that they took out of the cancer subplot. So it became pretty much like a dumb kind of comedy with a heart just became a dumb comedy after they retouched it.
So it's really bizarre movie in that sense, because I guess cooler heads did prevail, and it is in there. but I don't think it's as strong as maybe it could have been.
Although I think it's pretty endearing. I liked it. I enjoyed watching it.
If you're a Star Wars nerd, it's just like you're gonna cringe when you see yourself on screen because some of these guys are just. But we get Jay Baruchel, Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon, Kristen Bell, who is just absolutely adorable in everything she does.
Dan Fogler from the Fantastic Beasts movies and The Walking Dead.
Yep.
Playing a little bit too closely to that John Belushi archetype from
he's got the same body, he's got the same,
I love there's one scene where he's shirtless, and I think Kristen Bell says, "What did you land on, Alf?"
Oh yes, right.
This is interesting because we were going back and forth on what to cover with Umbrella Academy, either Detroit Rock City or this, and they're both led by Sam Huntington, both movies.
Huh.
So I just exclaimed out loud when I saw that Sam Huntington was in this. He's from Detroit Rock City.
Look at that. We could have done a Sam twofer.
Yeah.
Just done those two for but like you said, the cameos in this are just off the charts. At one point, they decide they're going to go out of their way to Indiana? Was it Indiana?
Was it
the Star Trek?
No,
the home of Captain Kirk.
It was Iowa.
Iowa. Yeah. If anybody doesn't know who Harry Knowles is, he created AintItCoolNews.com.
Yes.
And he was like the go-to nerd. Him and his father actually had a movie review TV show for a while. It might have been only online, like a YouTube series. As far as I know, he's not really connected with the website anymore. But he is just an odd-looking dude. And he shows up in this.
That's an actor playing.
Yes, correct. But it is. Yeah. But it's supposed to be. It looks just like him.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
But we got Danny Trejo,
right,
as the chief. Billy D. Williams shows up as Judge Reinhold.
Yeah.
Shatner, which is
Shatner shows up. Yeah. It's funny when they actually break in and George Lucas is supposed to be on the phone with Danny McBride, who's the head of security.
Yep.
The first thing he asks, was it Shatner?
Right. Ray Parks, who's Darth Maul. And then, like you said, Kevin Smith, Jason Mewes,
Carrie Fisher.
Carrie Fisher. So it is
Seth Rogen as well, playing 3 different characters.
Yeah. So the end result is yes, the one character is allowed to watch the movie by himself. That's it. And he's not allowed to talk about it. And then then it basically just cuts to them getting out of their tents at the end of they're waiting in line for episode 1. Cause that was huge. I mean, when trailer dropped online, and that was like the infancy of the internet. I mean, I was working in Stamford, Connecticut at the time. And I remember you couldn't just type in StarWars.com. It was this long, convoluted backslash crap that it was like you're breaking into a computer system.
And if I remember correctly, they were also posting webisodes of behind the scenes stuff every week or every. I didn't have access to that,
but it was. Okay. I mean, and when the trailer was released in theaters attached to Meet Joe Black, that was the #1 movie that week because people were paying for a ticket to go see Meet Joe Black. And then walking out after the trailer.
And I remember as well, once we started getting word that this was in production, when the abomination called Godzilla was released in 1998, they released on that website a big thing that said plot does matter, which was a riff on size does matter. But it turned out that, it does matter even with episode 1.
Yeah, because that's the beauty of it, is that these guys have waited all this time. And this came out like 10 years after the movie was released. So we had a fair amount of time to kind of take in all those prequels by then. But as they're sitting in the seats, the kid turns and he just goes, dude, what if it sucks? And cut the black. And you're just like.
But in retrospect, you obviously can say that episode 1 is probably the least of all of the Star Wars ephemera that's out there. But at the time, you're sitting in the theater. You've been waiting for this for over a decade.
Oh, these were the dark times.
I wasn't thinking that this sucked. I was just happy to be in there watching the Star Wars.
Oh, when that. So I didn't even have tickets. Trisha, we weren't even married yet. And I remember we were in the bank and my financial advisor guy, young kid, and we were talking about it. And he's like, oh, my buddy and I already have tickets to opening night. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't even tried, because I doubt I could have gotten Trish into the theater. He gave me his tickets. I think he thought it was like a goodwill gesture that I was going to like give him all my money. He didn't realize that I had all my money tied up in comic books. So it wasn't like I had a vast fortune, but I never bought tickets. He gave them to me, but we did go, and it was what it was. I mean, that three-way lightsaber fight.
That's the best lightsaber fight of the entire series, is that scene.
I could argue with you on the Rey and Kylo in the throne room.
Great part. No. He's the man.
Oh, he rocks it.
Yeah.
And it's just, you never even seen a double lightsaber. And all of a sudden, and that second one pops. So yeah, I mean, I understand full well, the fervor of this, and going to friggin' Toys R Us at midnight for those stupid toys that we.
And the trailer was awesome. The trailer for episode 1, but it did give away. There was a major spoiler, because you see the tortured scream that Obi-Wan gives when. You don't see Darth Maul killed. No, but you knew somebody was getting it from that.
And there's only 3 of them in the scene, so right, he's not going to cry for Darth Maul. So yeah, we could just talk endlessly about episode 1 itself.
Fanboys is
but
not
Fanboys
on our radar anymore. Yeah,
I have the Blu-ray, and there's a fair amount of deleted stuff on there.
In terms of the new movie that they tried to make without the cancer.
It's a lot of there's like some cameo stuff, like William Catt shot stuff, and his part was reshot and he was edited out. So all of his stuff is on the disc. And there's a extra stuff with Kevin, because Kevin Smith saw an advanced screening of this and then asked to have a cameo, and they filmed him in there.
And apparently Lucas also saw an advanced screening, loved it, and he allowed them to use the official sound effects, the Star Wars sound effects.
Yep. And I have to say, I don't think that they filmed in Lucas Ranch, the Skywalker Ranch, and I would have to look into it a little bit more, but it looked more like the props that Rancho Obi-Wan, Steve Sansweet owns, the world's largest privately owned Star Wars.
And it looked pretty sparse, that trophy room. So I would think that Lucas would have more stuff than that.
Well, it'd be probably all boxed up.
Right.
So,
I love that the security guards are dressed up like THX 1138.
Right. Yeah. So again, there's just a ton of little in jokes. They're taking their little jabs at Trekkies.
Get off our land, Garfunkel.
Right. Jabba the Hutt. That's a direct reference to Kristen Bell's TV show Veronica Mars. Yeah, and you get her in the Princess Leia slave outfit at the end, which is worth the price of admission.
And there's a great scene where Danny McBride, when he has them all at that board at that table, and he knows all about them. He's got their dossiers, right? And he says to what's Fogler's character, Hutchinson, right? Hutch. He says to him, "Oh, I know you're a Rush fan. How do you know that? Because you're wearing a Rush T-shirt." He's like, "You jerk."
All Rush all the time. Yeah. So it was fun. It's lighthearted.
But as the credits roll, it says produced by Kevin Spacey, and you're like, oh. And then you see Weinstein's name come up. You're like, oh.
I know. It's like the Weinstein group. You're all going down.
I would give this like 3.25. I think 3.25. Yeah. I was entertained. I liked it.
Good. I'm glad you liked it.
As fanboys ourselves, this got terrible reviews when it was released. And it's not really, because a movie like this that usually has that's about fans, usually fans like
embrace it.
And it's got more of a, Rotten Tomatoes fresh percentage than I think it's only got like 35% fresh.
Which is silly. I don't know.
But I read a quote. Roger Ebert said, "This identifies too closely with its heroes. Poking a little more fun at them would have been a great idea." But that's the point, is that it's made by fanboys for fanboys. Why feel the need
to poke fun at them anymore? I mean, whatever.
But yeah, I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yep. So there you go. Wow. And we did this in an hour.
We did it.
Wow. Secret episode drops.
Next week, like we said at the beginning, we're doing Da 5 Bloods and Kelly's Heroes.
Oh, that should be interesting.
1970 Clint Eastwood headed star-studded cast.
It is ridiculous how many people are in this movie. So there you go. All right, go check out The Umbrella Academy on Netflix.
Please.
All season 2 right there.
All right.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Cheers.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIConfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
Why don't we go find a farm mom to bang?